Am I being cancelled again?
Before we even begin, put down your pitchforks and actually listen to the entire video. You're not gonna get anywhere with me trying to reply me with hate. I was able to sit down, listen, reflect and change my point of view a bit, so you should absolutely be capable of doing the same. Feel free to agree or disagree respectfully, I don't care about that. Just listen to me first because this is really important and I need to get it off my chest as soon as possible, and felt like I should make it a video, even if it's the most serious one I've ever done. Please listen and only then, give me your feedback. Rude comments will be deleted, because it's hard enough to even bring up this subject because I'm basically traumatized about it thanks to Twitter. I just hope you can be nice, even if you disagree. Anyways, I've been doing a lot of self-reflection lately. I've gone through hell in my head but learned how to accept myself even with all my many flaws and fuck-ups, and how to move forward. Doing so, I've had to rethink my entire outlook on life and even started questioning everything I believe. One of those things being a question that has impacted my life in many ways actually, does fiction affect reality? People often have different answers for it, but they're usually an absolute yes or an absolute number. I mean, the overall answer is, yes but with an asterisk. That's not just a blanket statement you can throw around and pretend it's the absolute truth, and that anyone who wants to argue you is trying to reduce the legal age of consent throughout the world or something. The truth is, most people refuse to actually bother thinking about things that make them uncomfortable, which makes a lot of sense, but when you say stuff like that without providing any actual reasoning of your own, just saying the exact same things you've heard and assimilated without question, you're being a sheep, and that goes for both sides, actually. Yes, fiction does affect reality but at the end of the day it is still fiction, and treating people like shit because of it is almost always so much worse than someone enjoying fiction you find problematic. If you're religious or been raised in a religious household, like me at one point, then I guess I can understand that you've already been trained all your life to be used to absolute truths and statements that just shouldn't be questioned no matter what. Like saying, this thing is obviously wrong, do you even have to ask why? It's just obvious, if you don't get that, you should jump off a bridge, creep. If you think like that, guess what, you avoided the question. Again, not including religious people because they can hide anything behind God and commandments, so fine, they already have defined in their lives what's right or wrong and more often than not, it's almost impossible to change their minds on that. For everyone else, though, guess what? The world is complicated, things aren't always so obvious and there's a lot of gray areas all around. You cannot possibly say something is wrong because everyone knows it's wrong. That's mob mentality, something very hard to break away from but it's true. You're still an individual too and you should be able to question everything to some degree at least. You are an intelligent animal yourself, after all, aren't you? And don't bother saying that the world would be thrown into chaos thinking like that, because guess what, if something is objectively wrong, there's a reason for it. Murdering, stealing, harassing. You can objectively explain why they are wrong. Not because you are biased and it supports your views, but because you can actually give an objective answer. Murder is wrong because every person has the right to live. Stealing is wrong because every person has the right of having their own possessions and belongings. Harassment is wrong because every person deserves to be treated properly, and it is a form of violence against them, and so on and so forth. These things are objectively true and we can explain it simply and honestly. I mean, these are so simple that even a child might be able to come up with an answer similar to that, in their own words, if they're properly educated at least. And even then, there is still gray areas even on something like this. Murder is wrong, but what if they try to take your life first? What if it's a war? See, even with the most extreme example, there's still nuances to be had. Life has very few absolute truths, so the fact that people see something as small as enjoying taboo stuff in media as something unforgivable is very strange. Why is that wrong, I ask? You might say, because it's depicting something problematic. Fiction influences people, and that could encourage them to do that in real life. I mean, yeah, it definitely could, fiction does have that effect. It can touch people's hearts and influence them a lot. Even so, is that an absolute truth? If it was, any person that watched FMAB would be inspired immediately to change their whole worldview around and their whole outlook on life would improve significantly. But is that the case every time? Of course not. It could be true, but only if the person is ready to receive that kind of influence. So basically, if you're not at least somewhat ready to make that change in your mindset even before watching it, that change just won't happen. Likewise, yeah, problematic fiction can take someone a bad path. But only if they're already leaning towards that. Fiction can't turn a person into a monster. That person already had that darkness growing inside them beforehand. And if you doubt that, look at Marilyn Manson. Back in the day, people wanted to blame him for the Columbine shooting. And I mean, say what you want about his music videos, because they're definitely disturbing and a bit too dark and uncomfortable for me, but that said, that music won't make anyone do something horrible. The guys who did that were probably going to do something similar anyway. Or the Nevada Tan case. The girl was just a kid, but she sliced the throat of her classmate because she enjoyed gory stuff and was obsessed about that kind of thing. Is the gory stuff to blame? What she watched was fiction. What fault do the creators have over her crime? Yeah, they're making problematic and dark fiction and fiction can affect people. But at the end of the day, that's all it is. Fiction. 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 But many people seem to be completely fine with violent and ultra-gory things, but other than that, it's all taboo for some reason. They will say that video games don't cause violence, that's stupid. But someone reading a taboo doujin, now that will turn them into a criminal, for sure. I don't get this separation, both would not be okay in real life at all, right? And maybe you might lose your mind over there on your chair, get pissed at me and yell, you idiot. Why are you comparing violence and sex stuff? That's a complete fallacy, and sure, maybe it could be. Again, I'm not the owner of the truth nor am I claiming to have all the answers, I'm still learning and reflecting on my own, really. Still, even if they are completely different like that, let's just combine them for you. Because you are aware that some people will get off to dojins where a girl gets her body cut open, her organs exposed and her eye hole penetrated. Disgusting, I agree, but is there something wrong with someone who gets off to something like that? Not necessarily. Sure, some of these people may be actually sick and would love the chance to do that to someone for real, but you can't judge a whole group based on a few sickos. There are horrible people everywhere, and it's not just on the groups that enjoy the taboo stuff but also among the people that criticize those people, and there's plenty of examples of that too. That hypocrisy is so ridiculous, yet it seems to slide under the radar for some people. The reason for that being that, well, everyone likes to think they're on the right side and that whoever they hate is on the wrong side. That kinda us versus them mentality is fine if we're talking about racism, but on most other contexts it's just really harmful, making you completely ignore any other visions that don't align with yours, when the truth is that there's layers to life, nobody knows everything and you can learn a little bit with everyone, even the people that you disagree with. Sometimes, it can be good for you, really. And yeah, violent media could affect someone into being violent if they already had that in them, just like video games can cause you to be violent if you already have that in you. But if you already have that within you, you're so fucked up that something like that can turn you into a monster. Honestly, you were already a ticking time bomb. Anything could have set you off, it was only a matter of time. There are always special situations where it does directly affect real life, but it's not all of them. Like, this example I read about that, in Cardcaptor Sakura there is a young girl that has a crush on her teacher. Nothing strange up to that point. But the teacher actually seems to return those feelings, apparently. Reminder that, from what I know, this anime is aimed towards kids and young teens. So that could actually have real impact considering they are especially easy to influence and could end up thinking that it's normal for something like that to happen. One example that's a bit less extreme would be the example of the word, trap, as a slur. It has been used for a long time as a transphobic word, but some people will claim that it's okay if it's towards anime characters. I mean, again, I'm not here to argue about the rights of anime characters in real life, because be honest with yourself, they don't have any, obviously. But the actual issue is trying to justify the use of said word, really. That kind of mentality somewhat normalized the word to the point where some people will call someone who's trans or a crossdresser in real life that word, and that's kinda foul, if you ask me. A word like femboy is taken much more lightly nowadays and is not nearly as bad, especially considering it simply means feminine boy. Trap, on the other end, implies malice, like the old stereotype that someone crossdressing is trying to trick you into sleeping with them even if you don't like males and such. The old notion that queer people are inclined to be predators and that sort of thing. Which is ironic given that most people that use that word online are very much not being fooled in the slightest and are actually seeking it out, if anything. If you use it only towards anime characters, I won't necessarily say you have bigoted ideas or anything. But just imagine a world where it's common to refer to queer-coded fictional characters as the F-slur. Wouldn't you agree that something like that being normalized would lead more people to keep calling real queer people that word too, just because? Again, the word itself won't make anyone transphobic unless they already were. But given all the baggage it carries, really think about it and think about what it implies. I can definitely say that when someone I was trying to explain how I feel about my own gender to just straight up said, "Oh, so you're a trap, then." It is a very not nice feeling, let me tell you, and it wouldn't have happened if people had a little bit more understanding and just tried being a bit nicer and more respectful. Another occasion where something can easily slip from behavior common with fiction but not as much in reality, and a slippery slope much easier to fall into in my opinion than whatever the hell the people on Twitter be on about, is shipping. Suppose someone you know ships two characters that show no romantic chemistry in the story, more than that, they clearly seem to be nothing but friends. But that person still ships it. Anything abnormal about that? Not really. They're just indulging in a fantasy and they enjoy doing so. In the end, who cares? I feel like we all have those ships that we look at and find absurd, but it's still mostly just harmless fun, unless they're toxic against anyone who disagrees, and that's a whole different conversation. But some people are so obsessed about ships that they ship real people, like YouTubers and other celebrities. Even if those people are okay with the shipping, it can be a bad idea to ship them already. I mean, they may even be in an actual relationship, but if one day they break up, all the people who were super invested in their ship will lose their goddamn minds over it. And even worse than that, sometimes the people involved will feel uncomfortable with the whole thing, ask people to stop, and they'll still keep doing it. You see, those are actual people with actual lives, thoughts and feelings of their own. Yet it seems like so many people will treat said things as if they were just watching a show, basically objectifying the people involved against their will. With a fictional character, that's one thing, but with real people, that simply needs to be addressed, because, guess what? It actually can indeed hurt someone. And let's not also forget that contacting authorities to report on someone because of loli stuff, for example, they are literally harming children, the thing these people claim to be against, all the while literally getting in the way of actual reports of real crimes. So in the end, even if you want to claim that loli stuff harms kids despite not providing anything to back it up aside from, well, I think so at least, you're still one doing the most harm if anything. Again, you literally don't have to like it. If it's that serious to you, block and move on. No call for harassment, no wishing harm, no threats, no nothing. You are not special, you are not better than anyone, and the high horse you think you're on isn't real. You've just convinced yourself it's real because your ego said so. It's easy to judge someone when it's something like that, but if you're that desperate to find any weakness a person might show so you can expose and feed off of it, the last thing you're worried about is protecting anyone. You are not acting like a hero. You are acting like a bully, and you should really think about your priorities. Even still, yeah, even after all that being said, it's not like taboo content itself also causes no harm at all. But I'm very much not talking about the way Twitter folks talk about it like they're a holy knight leading a crusade and that said fiction is harming real people. Because honestly, it's not. If it's not depicting real people, then it's just not. Again, unless the person consuming it has actual issues going on already, then it very much won't hurt someone. I'm talking about the person consuming it, because it can definitely have a negative impact on you. The truth is, that kind of thing is a very dangerous mix to go along with an addiction for adult material. They become a powerful combo that can really impact your mental health and self-esteem heavily. It's very wrong for people to treat people who enjoy that stuff like they do, but after going through my self-reflection arc, the other side might glorify the addiction too much as well. I mean, I definitely see why that happens. Everyone shits on you for enjoying what you enjoy, so you find a group where everyone supports each other as they are, and there's beauty in that. Still, the problem is, it kinda enables you to not want to question your current situation. It makes you grow comfortable, satisfied. And I don't think that's for the best either. And not for anyone else but the person in question. Ultimately, it's fine to enjoy whatever fantasies you have, so long as it's nothing that actually harms someone. But when you get to a point like I have before, where you're so addicted to the taboo stuff, where not only you start seeking more and more difficult taboo stuff, and the stuff that's vanilla just becomes boring by comparison, then that is actually a real issue, and could very much impact your well-being in any relationships you might have in the future. Even your sex and romantic life, really. Because the addiction to adult materials already affects that heavily, and the taboo is just an extra spice to it. An extra boost that tightens the grip it has on you. Everything in excess becomes a problem, as they say. And that kind of thing is no exception. So if you feel like it's taken over your life, to the point where you almost hide behind that stuff online, like it's your entire persona, and spend hours and hours a day doing only that, you may want to take a step back, reevaluate yourself and really think about your deep-rooted insecurities, acknowledge them and work on that. I've been thinking a lot about a video about finding yourself I've watched the other day. The video talked about Sartre and how to him, there is no such thing as finding yourself. Human beings are infinitely complex and layered creatures, and we can't comprehend even a fraction of how deep you really are. That's why we have personas, really, different facets of our personality that come out depending on the situation. Most of those are molded by external factors too, but we can actually have some control over them. You are infinitely complex, so you do not find yourself, you make yourself. You can choose who you want to become, to a degree. So even if fiction is fiction, at the end of the day, you can only go so far wearing the Gunnar persona. Sooner or later you're gonna realize you want to be more in your life. And when you come to that realization, you should definitely seek some help to address the buried underlying issues you have deep inside of you. There is no shame in admitting you have problems. Truly, we all do. But it is nothing you can't get through. Speaking from experience, my mental health has improved significantly since I've started therapy and started taking antidepressants. And now I can acknowledge fully many awful things I did in the past and be able to accept and move forward, wanting to be someone genuinely better from this point on. And when I look at all that I've been working for, stuff I'm cutting out of me and stuff I'm working towards overcoming step by step, I still can't rationally see the great evil coming from said fiction. The main issue was internal, not external. I'm still very much toning down the amount of adult content I consume, so that I can one day say I'm no longer addicted at all. I already feel a huge difference and much less ashamed. Still, it's not like I don't enjoy what I enjoy anymore, but I will tone it way down for my own sake. Sexual fantasies are very normal and stuff like that is just one of the forms it can take. And once again, if it's not actually hurting anyone, then what is the issue exactly? I mean, really, what's the difference between a Nezuko doujin and someone who cosplays as Nezuko for their partner? Practically, zero. Nobody is being hurt in either. And I even heard someone try to argue that anime characters cannot consent, and, disrespectfully, that's the dumbest shit I've ever heard. If that was true, then all of Rule 34 should be completely illegal, not just some stuff here and there. Not only that, but it's comparable to this one person I've seen on Twitter trying to start a discourse against what they called objectophilia, which would be the attraction against inanimate objects, and that being something horrible because objects cannot consent. I mean, yeah, they can't. Because they don't have feelings. Neither do anime characters. What's the difference between your waifu and a fleshlight or a dildo in that sense? No, the real reason why people have an issue is because they don't like it. And I mean, yeah, fair enough, nobody is saying you have to. If you don't have any taboo enjoyments at all, neat, good for you. But trying to pretend that the people who do are awful villains and that they should be hunted down and burned at the stake because they're, quote-unquote, hurting real people, without explaining what the fuck does that mean at all is, frankly, pathetic as shit. All that does is incite hate and harassment, make people even more insecure, make them want to lean even more towards talking only to people who enjoy that stuff and who think the exact same way, and perpetuate this vicious cycle of hate, where nobody listens to nobody, even when both sides have good and bad points being brought up. We are all human, and finding out someone enjoys stuff like that is no reason for such a reaction. You're allowed to be put off, you're allowed to feel uncomfortable, or whatever else, really. You are human too, of course, and you can feel however you want to feel about it. But don't perpetuate this pointless cycle. Because let me tell you, that is what's actually hurting real people. Lots of them. Nobody ends up winning when you try to settle stuff like this with blind toxicity. Besides, if you claim to really care about victims of actual abuse that much, if you spent the same energy you spend chasing down anyone you deem as a predator for stupid arbitrary reasons, in chasing actual predators online, then you'd actually be doing something objectively positive instead of just trying to get off on bullying people. I mean, if you're into harassment, if degrading is one of your kinks, that's cool, I'm not gonna shame you for it. But don't hurt actual people for that. Look for it in the world of fiction. Or at least ask for consent first. Geez, I'm sure we'd all be much happier that way. Life has very few absolute truths, but one of the very few I can say with certainty is that hate doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't motivate people to change, it doesn't affect the world positively, it doesn't help anyone. If you want to actually make a difference and make yourself heard, keep that in mind. That, and the fact that nobody can help you change for the better if you don't, first. If you're depressed, you will need professional treatment as soon as possible, and that will help you a whole lot, but it's still gotta come from you. It's a challenge, for sure, but I am trying myself. And I think it's time you do the same too. One step at a time. And if you allow me, if there's one thing that I've learned with Fullmetal Alchemist is that we are only human. We fall, we make mistakes, we spread war and hate for no reason. Still, only by learning from each other and overcoming our own flaws and biases, can we have a fuller perspective on life. I guess fiction did affect me after all in the end, huh? But I can assure you, I had to be ready to receive it first. That's all I wanted to say. Just be chill and think about what I said, okay? I doubt this video will change anything, but if it makes a single person reflect and change themselves for the better even a little bit, then it was all worth it in the end. That's all, really. Thank you all for listening to my rambling. It might have been nonsense to some of you, but it still came from the heart nonetheless. That is all.